New horror story. I met La Llorona on a desert road at 2 a.m. The desert at night is merciless. The moon turned the canal into a strip of silver, and the silence was so deep it pressed against my ears. That's when I heard it. Crying. Not faint, but close, a woman's sobs heavy with grief. I slowed and killed the headlights. The crying didn't fade. It circled the car, too loud, too human. Then my radio flickered on, spitting static, and through the hiss came her voice. ¿Dónde están mis hijos? Heart pounding, I stepped out with my flashlight. The moment the door slammed, the crying stopped. Then came a wet, dragging sound, like fabric soaked in water scraping through mud. My beam found small, bare footprints along the canal. Some pressed deep, others hovered lightly as if the person drifted above the ground. The crying started again, closer, moving fast. My light swept across the canal and froze. A woman in a white dress stood ankle deep in the water. Her hair hung in dripping ropes, veiling her face, but the water churned violently around her legs even though she stood still. She lifted her head. Moonlight revealed hollow black sockets where eyes should be, skin pale and bloated like a drowned corpse. Her mouth opened and dirty canal water poured out, along with a child's shoe that tumbled into the current. I staggered back, but her voice cracked the night again, louder, echoing inside my skull. ¿Dónde están mis hijos? The canal joined her, bubbling with the cries of children drowning beneath the surface. I turned and ran. Every few steps, the crying cut off, only to erupt right behind me as though she had moved without sound. Branches tore at me, mud dragged me down. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Mama, calling, but I knew my mother was asleep. I didn't answer. The crying was in my ear now, as if she leaned over my shoulder. My flashlight flickered out, plunging me into darkness. I hit the car, threw myself inside, and slammed the locks down. The headlights flicked on by themselves, blasting the empty road. She stood in the middle of it now, dress dripping, head tilted, arms limp at her sides. Her voice spilled from the speakers, layered and endless. ¿Dónde están mis hijos? ¿Dónde están mis hijos? I floored the accelerator. For a moment, I thought I'd left her behind. But in the rearview mirror, she was running beside the car, barefoot, her white dress plastered to her skin, hair whipping against the window, keeping pace at 70 miles an hour. Then she was gone, just like that, vanished. I didn't stop driving until I reached the first gas station, miles down the road. When I stumbled inside, the clerk froze. He said I was white as chalk, drenched in sweat, shaking. I told him what I'd seen. He didn't laugh. He just nodded slowly and whispered, La Llorona, the weeping woman. She drowned her children and now she wanders near water, crying for them. If you heard her, amigo, you're marked. I drove the rest of the way home with every light on in the car, and by dawn, exhaustion finally pulled me into uneasy sleep. For a while, everything seemed normal again. But on quiet nights when the air is still and the crickets stop singing all at once, I sometimes hear it faintly, soft sobbing drifting through the darkness. And every time, I wonder if she's found me again, or if she's still searching for her children. Thank you for listening. If you really like the story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more daily horror stories. Thanks. New horror story. My dead wife wants my son. My wife Sarah died in a car accident 6 months ago, but she's been calling our 4-year-old son every night since the funeral. And he always answers. I thought it was grief at first. Kids process trauma differently, right? When Tommy started talking to the air, having full conversations with someone who wasn't there, the therapist said it was normal. Children often create imaginary friends to cope with loss, she explained. Let him work through it naturally. But Tommy wasn't talking to an imaginary friend. He was talking to his mother. The conversations always happened at bedtime. I'd tuck him in, kiss his forehead, and head downstairs to clean up dinner. Within minutes, I'd hear his little voice chattering away upstairs. When I checked on him, he'd be sitting up in bed, facing the corner where Sarah used to read him stories, speaking in that animated way kids do when they're excited. Mommy says she misses me too, he'd tell me. She says she's coming to get me soon so we can be together again. The first few times it broke my heart. I'd hold him and explain again that Mommy was in heaven, that she couldn't come back. But Tommy would shake his head with the stubborn certainty only children possess. "She's not in heaven, Daddy. She's right there." He'd point to the empty corner. "Yeah, can't you see her?" I started sleeping in the chair outside his room, telling myself I was protecting him from nightmares. But what I heard those nights made my blood run cold. Tommy's conversations weren't one-sided anymore. I could hear pauses like he was listening to responses. He'd giggle at jokes I couldn't hear. He'd say things like, "Okay, Mommy, I'll ask Daddy," or "No, I don't want to eat vegetables either." Last Tuesday night, I heard him whisper, "When are we going, Mommy? Tonight?" I burst into his room, flicking on the lights. Tommy was sitting on the edge of his bed, fully dressed in his favorite dinosaur pajamas with his little backpack beside him. "Daddy," he said, smiling. "Mommy says it's time to go. She's been waiting so long." "Go where, buddy?" "To be with her. She says families should be together." His eyes were bright, excited. "She says you can come too, but only if you want to." I knelt beside his bed, trying to keep my voice steady. "Tommy, Mommy isn't here. She can't take you anywhere." That's when I heard it. A sound that made every hair on my body stand up. 3 soft knocks on the bedroom window. The same pattern Sarah used to tap on the glass when she forgot her keys and needed me to let her in. Tommy's face lit up. "See? She's here!" He grabbed his backpack and ran toward the window. I caught him before he could reach it, scooping him up as he struggled against me. "Mommy's waiting," he cried. "Let me go to Mommy." I looked toward the window and my heart stopped. There, pressed against the glass from the outside, was the outline of a woman's hand. But we lived on the 2nd floor. There was nothing outside that window except a 20-foot drop to the concrete driveway. The knocking came again, harder this time. Tommy stopped struggling and looked at me with Sarah's eyes. When he spoke, his voice had the cadence of an adult, the slight lisp Sarah had when she was tired. "David," he said in his 4-year-old voice, but with Sarah's mannerisms, "you can't keep him from me forever. A mother needs her child." The hand on the window began to slide downward, leaving a streak on the glass. I grabbed Tommy and ran. We drove until the road sign stopped making sense and checked into a cheap hotel 3 towns away. For the first time in months, he slept peacefully. No conversations with empty corners, no midnight knocks. I must have dozed off too, because when I opened my eyes, Tommy was standing by the bed, staring at me. His face was blank, but his smile was too wide. And when he spoke, it wasn't his voice at all, it was hers. "See, David, I told you we'd be together again." My son's small mouth formed the words, but the tone, the lisp, the cadence, it was Sarah. I looked toward the mirror on the hotel wall and froze. 3 people were reflected in the glass, but in the room, there were only 2 of us. New horror story. I fell in love with something from the other side. I was sitting on the steps outside my campus building when she appeared. A girl so beautiful it almost hurt to look at her. She smiled at me like we already knew each other and said, "I've been watching you for a while. I think I'm in love with you." My heart pounded so hard I could barely breathe. I'd never seen her before, but the way she looked at me, it was like she had been waiting just for me. We only had a few minutes before my next class, so we promised to meet again tomorrow. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Every detail replayed in my head. Her smile, her voice, the way her hair caught the sunlight. I wanted to know more, so I searched for her name online. I found her profile in seconds, and then my stomach dropped. Her page was filled with condolences. Friends and family posting memories, crying emojis, and rest in peace messages. She had died in an accident 3 months ago. At first I thought it was some kind of sick prank, but the more I scrolled, the worse it got. Photos of her funeral, news articles, her face smiling from a framed picture surrounded by candles. I slammed my laptop shut, my pulse thundering in my ears. The silence of the room suddenly felt wrong, too heavy, too expectant. I kept glancing over my shoulder like someone was behind me. When I finally lay down, I heard it, a whisper in the dark. Soft, right next to my ear. "I can't wait for tomorrow." I shot up, turned on every light, searched the entire apartment. Nothing. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. No message, no call. Just the screen flickering with static like an old TV. I didn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. Sometimes smiling, sometimes staring, sometimes crying blood. Around 3 a.m., the sound began. A dragging noise. Not outside, not in the walls. Under my bed. Fingernails scraping wood. My chest locked tight as I leaned down, praying I'd see nothing. Only dust and shadows stared back. When I sat back up, she was on my bed. Her hair hung forward, hiding her face, shoulders trembling like she was laughing. My throat ripped open in a scream, but when I blinked, she was gone. Only the sheet still sank as though someone had just stood up. I told myself it was a nightmare, until the second dream started. I woke inside my own room, or thought I did. She was perched in the corner, her head tilted too far, whispering words I couldn't understand. My body refused to move. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Then she shifted. Her back arched, bones cracking, as she crawled up the wall and onto the ceiling, her fingers scraping against the plaster like nails on a coffin lid. I squeezed my eyes shut, praying it would end. When I opened them, I was still in bed. But the air was colder, heavy with the smell of dirt and roses. The same smell that roses from her funeral would have. The mirror across the room began to glow faintly. I didn't want to look, but my eyes betrayed me. Her reflection stood there, smiling. Her lips moved, but I couldn't hear the words. My ears rang, blood rushing in my head. I whispered, "You're not real." Her smile widened, and then, in my own voice, she whispered back, "You're awake, aren't you? Then open your eyes." I blinked, and she was standing right behind me, her hands gripping my shoulders. That was a year ago. I don't live in that city anymore. I don't go to that school. I left everything behind and started over somewhere far away. I don't tell people this story, not really. They'd never believe me anyway, but sometimes, late at night, I think about her. I still don't know what she was. A ghost, a hallucination, a curse, and maybe I don't want to know, because some mysteries are better left unsolved. New horror story. My dead girlfriend appeared in my new apartment photos. The photo I just took shows my dead girlfriend standing behind me in my bedroom. But I buried Emma 3 months ago. My hands won't stop shaking as I stare at my phone screen, zooming in on her decomposing face that shouldn't exist. I downloaded FaceShift 5 days ago, desperate for anything that might help me cope. My therapist said I needed to stop obsessing over old photos of Emma, but I couldn't help myself. I'd been using apps to edit her back into recent pictures of my life. Our empty apartment. The restaurant where we had our first date. Even my friend's wedding last week. FaceShift was different. It appeared in the App Store with no developer listed, just a black icon with a silver eye. The AI was impossibly sophisticated, capable of inserting people into photos so seamlessly that even I sometimes forgot they weren't really there. But something went wrong after the first night. Emma started appearing in photos I hadn't edited. Random shots of my morning coffee, pictures I took at work, even security footage from my building's lobby that I accessed through the management app. Always in the background, always watching me with those hollow eye sockets I remembered from the morgue. I tried to delete FaceShift, but it had somehow integrated itself into my phone's operating system. Worse, it began showing me things I never wanted to see. Photos of Emma's final moments. Her face turning blue in the bathtub where I found her. The overdose that the coroner said was accidental, but I knew better. I knew she'd chosen to leave me. Last night, the app started taking pictures by itself. I'd wake up to dozens of photos on my camera roll. Images of my bedroom in perfect darkness. But through FaceShift's lens, I could see Emma sitting on the edge of our bed, her skin gray and bloated, mouth hanging open like she was trying to scream. Now she's getting closer. In this morning's automatic photos, she's standing right next to me while I sleep. I can see bite marks on her arms, the same ones that were there when I found her. Self-inflicted wounds from her final psychotic break. But in the photos, they're fresh and bleeding. I aim my camera at the empty space where she appears in the images. Through the viewfinder, I can see her clearly now, reaching toward me with fingers that end in exposed bone. Her eyes are completely black, and when her mouth moves, maggots spill out instead of words. Why didn't you save me, Marcus? The voice comes from my phone's speaker, distorted and wet, but Emma's lips in the camera feed don't match the words. I back away, but she follows me through the screen. In every photo, she's a step closer to the camera's edge, as if she's trying to climb out of the digital space and into my world. The smell hits me then, that sweet, cloying stench of decay that I remember from the funeral home. It's getting stronger, filling my apartment even though Emma isn't really here. Is she? I run to my bathroom and splash cold water on my face. But when I look up at the mirror, she's standing behind me in the reflection, her head tilted at the wrong angle, water streaming from her hair and clothes. You could have stopped me, she whispers, and this time I can see her mouth moving in the mirror. You knew I was getting worse. You chose not to see. She's right. The signs were all there. The paranoia, the sleepless nights, the way she'd started talking to people who weren't there. But I was so tired of being her caretaker, so resentful of what our relationship had become, that I'd started staying late at work just to avoid coming home. The night she died, I'd ignored 17 missed calls. I smashed the bathroom mirror with my fist, cutting my knuckles on the glass. But Emma's reflection appears in every shard, multiplied into dozens of accusing faces. My phone buzzes with a notification from FaceShift. New photos available. The camera roll shows hundreds of new images, all taken in the last few seconds. In every single one, Emma is getting closer, climbing out of the bathroom mirror, reaching for me with arms that stretch impossibly long. In the final photo, she's touching my shoulder. I can feel her cold fingers on my skin now, real and solid. When I turn around, she's standing there in my bathroom, water pooling at her feet, her dead eyes boring into mine. Now you can join me, she says, and I realize the photos were never about bringing her back. They were about dragging me down with her. New horror story. I'm an elevator operator in hell. This little girl showed me the worst floor. The worst part isn't the screaming. You get used to that. It's the hope. Every morning the elevator dings and I think, this is it. They're coming for me. But it's never for me. I've been riding this elevator down, always down, through levels that keep getting worse. I'm the operator now, though I don't remember choosing this job. My red uniform just appeared one day, blood-soaked and reeking of sulfur with a name tag that changes when I'm not looking. The passengers are always the same, recently dead, confused, still wearing their deaths like jewelry. The woman with her skull caved in, the man whose throat opens and closes like a second mouth, the teenager whose bones jut through her skin at impossible angles. But today's passenger makes my skin crawl. She's a little girl in a yellow dress, maybe 8 years old. No wounds, no trauma. She hums a nursery rhyme as she steps into the elevator. Something about ring around the rosy. What floor, I ask, dreading the answer. The nursery, she says sweetly. I want to see where they keep the broken toys. The elevator plunges deeper than I've ever gone before. The walls start bleeding, not metaphorically, but actually weeping thick, dark blood that pools at our feet. The little girl splashes in it playfully. You know what the nursery is? She asks, still humming. I don't answer. I can't. It's where they put the grown-ups who liked playing with children too much. But here's the really fun part. They get to keep playing forever and ever. The doors open to hell's true masterpiece. Endless cribs line a vast room, each one containing a full-grown adult curled in the fetal position. They're all naked, sobbing, sucking their thumbs, while shadows with too many hands reach through the bars to touch them. The shadows whisper things that make the adults shriek and beg for death that will never come. They get to be the children now, the little girl explains, clapping her hands with delight. Isn't that wonderful? They get to feel exactly what we felt, but forever and ever and ever. I watch one of the cribs, a man who looks like someone's grandfather, crying as invisible hands explore his body while he's powerless to stop them. His eyes have been sewn shut so he can only feel what's happening, never see it coming. The best part, the girl continues, is that they remember being adults. They remember when they were the big, scary monsters. But now they're just little helpless things that nobody will protect. She skips between the cribs and the sobbing gets louder as the shadows become more aggressive. Some of the adults have torn their own throats out trying to scream, but they just heal and tear them out again. I used to live in that crib over there. She points to one in the corner where a man is being force-fed something black and writhing. That's Uncle Danny. He taught me games I didn't want to play. The little girl's face starts to change, aging rapidly, decomposing, revealing the skull beneath. But I grew up eventually. Down here, the victims become the babysitters. She turns to me with empty eye sockets. And you, Father, get to watch. Forever? Because you never stopped us when you could have. The elevator doors slam shut, but I can still hear the nursery rhymes echoing through the walls. Ring around the rosy, pocket full of posies. As we rise back up through the regular hells, the murderers burning, the thieves being eaten alive, I catch my reflection in the elevator's blood-stained mirror. My name tag reads Father Thomas, and I remember why I'm here. Not for what I did, but for what I didn't do. All those confessions from parishioners about touching their children. All those times I told them to say 10 Hail Marys and sent them home to do it again. All those little souls I could have saved but didn't because it would have been inconvenient. The elevator stops at my floor, where I spend eternity listening to recordings of every confession I ignored, every child I failed to protect. But tomorrow, I'll wake up hoping for redemption. And she'll be waiting for me, the little girl who grew up in hell, because I let her uncle put her there. Going down, Father? She asks, holding a list of names. All the children I could have saved. All the ones coming to visit. New horror story. I met the Kuntilanak ghost bride asked me where her baby was. I moved into the apartment in Kuching 2 years ago, and I still sleep with every light in my house turned on. It started with the temperature. My studio would drop 20 degrees without warning, always around 2 a.m. I'd wake up shivering, my breath visible in the suddenly frigid air, condensation dripping down the windows like tears. Then came the crying. Soft, heartbroken weeping through the thin walls, so raw and desperate it made my chest ache. I was an exchange student from Vancouver, barely 3 weeks into my semester abroad, and I thought maybe my neighbor was going through a breakup. The sound was haunting, not just sadness, but grief so deep it felt like drowning. Sometimes I'd lie awake listening, feeling guilty for eavesdropping on someone's private pain. After 2 weeks, I couldn't take it anymore. I knocked on my neighbor's door. "Excuse me," I said to the elderly Malay woman who answered. "I just wanted to check if everything's okay. I've been hearing crying at night." She stared at me like I'd said something impossible. "Crying? Child, I sleep very soundly, and besides..." She gestured down the empty hallway. "There's no one living next to you. That unit's been empty for months." That night, I pressed my ear against the wall so hard it left a mark. The crying was definitely coming from the vacant apartment. But now I could hear something else underneath the sobs. A wet, sucking sound, like someone drowning. I called the landlord the next morning. He confirmed the unit was empty. "Water damage from a burst pipe," he said. "Mold issues, uninhabitable." But the crying continued every night, and the temperature drops got worse. On Friday, I found them. Wet footprints in my bathroom, small and delicate, leading from the bathtub to the window. The water was still warm when I touched it, and it smelled wrong. Not like tap water, but thick and metallic, like blood mixed with jasmine. I live on the 7th floor. That weekend, I bought a thermometer and started documenting everything. Temperature drops, exact times, duration. The crying lasted exactly 17 minutes each night. The footprints appeared 3 times a week, always fresh, always warm. Then I found the hair. Long black strands clogging my bathroom drain, even though I'm blonde. Wet clumps of it, so much that I had to pull it out with rubber gloves. It smelled like stagnant water and rotting flowers. Saturday night, I decided to record everything. I set up my phone and waited with all the lights blazing. At 2 a.m. exactly, the temperature plummeted. My breath came out in white puffs and frost started forming on the windows. The crying began, closer now, like it was coming from inside my walls. Then I heard water running in the bathroom. I grabbed a kitchen knife, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold it. Steam was pouring out from under the bathroom door, but the air was still freezing cold. How was that possible? The door handle was ice cold when I touched it. It burned my palm like dry ice. I pushed the door open and immediately gagged. The smell hit me like a physical blow. Jasmine flowers left to rot in stagnant water, sweet and putrid and overwhelming. A woman stood in my bathtub, facing away from me. Long black hair hanging in wet ropes down her back, white nightgown clinging to her skeletal frame. She was crying, her whole body convulsing with sobs. But the sound wasn't coming from her throat. It was coming from somewhere else, somewhere deeper, like it was echoing up from inside her chest. "How did you get in here?" I whispered. She stopped crying instantly. The silence was deafening. Then she began to turn around, and I saw her reflection in the mirror first. Beautiful face, perfect skin, but her eyes were completely white. Not blind white, but pearl white, like they were filled with milk. When she faced me fully, I saw the truth. Where her stomach should have been was just empty space. A gaping hole I could see straight through to the shower wall behind her. And from that hollow cavity, dark water was pouring onto my bathroom floor. She smiled at me with perfect teeth, and water spilled from her mouth when she spoke. "My baby," she whispered, her voice like drowning. "Where is my baby?" I ran. Crashed through my apartment, threw myself down 7 flights of stairs, and didn't stop running until I reached the 24-hour McDonald's 3 blocks away. When I finally went back the next morning to pack, I found something that still makes me physically sick. Written on my bathroom mirror in what looked like condensation but couldn't be erased. "I followed you home." The writing was on the inside of the glass. I transferred universities that week, flew back to Vancouver, and never looked back. But she kept her promise. 2 years later, and I still find long black hairs in my drain. I still wake up to the smell of rotting jasmine. And sometimes when I'm alone in my bathroom, I hear that soft crying and feel the temperature drop. She's still looking for her baby, and I think she believes I know where it is. New horror story. Every employee in the building has my name. I turned in my security badge tonight, and I'm not coming back. I've been working the night shift at Meridian Tower for 4 months now, and I just figured out why the previous guard left his uniform folded neatly on the desk, with a note that just said, "Don't stay past sunrise." My name is Casey, and until 3 hours ago, I thought I had the easiest job in the city. 12 floors of mostly empty offices, a few overnight cleaning crews, and the occasional executive working late. Just me, the security desk, and a wall of monitors showing feeds from every camera in the building. The kind of job where you can study for classes, watch Netflix, and collect a decent paycheck for basically babysitting an empty building. But tonight, I started watching the footage more carefully. It began when I noticed the same person on 3 different floors at the same time. A woman in a business suit walking purposefully down identical hallways on floors 4, 7, and 10. At first I thought it was a glitch, maybe the cameras were showing old footage. But when I switched between the feeds in real time, she was moving in perfect synchronization on all 3 floors, taking the exact same steps, checking the exact same doors. I decided to investigate. I took the elevator to the 4th floor and walked the route I'd seen her take. The hallway was empty, but every office door was slightly ajar, and from each one came the soft sound of typing. Dozens of keyboards clicking in perfect rhythm like a synchronized orchestra of data entry. I peered into the first office and saw a man in a suit sitting at a desk, typing on a computer that wasn't plugged into anything. The screen was black, but his fingers moved with mechanical precision across the keys. His eyes never blinked, and his head never moved. The same man was in every office, typing on dead computers, wearing identical suits, with the same blank expression on the same face. When I got back to the security desk, I checked the night logs from previous shifts. The entries were all in different handwriting, but they said the same thing. Building secure. All personnel accounted for. No incidents to report. But according to the sign-in sheets, no one had entered or left the building during any of these shifts. I started reviewing weeks of security footage, fast-forwarding through hours of empty hallways and vacant offices. But around 2 a.m. every night, the building came alive. The same people appeared on every floor, the woman in the business suit, the man typing at dead computers. Others I hadn't noticed before. A janitor mopping floors that were already clean, an executive giving presentations to empty conference rooms, a receptionist answering phones that never rang. They all moved with purpose, but nothing they did served any actual function. It was like watching a play performed for an audience that didn't exist. That's when I noticed something in the elevator footage that made my blood go cold. Every night around 3:30 a.m., the elevator would open on the basement level, a floor that didn't exist according to the building directory. People would exit onto a level that shouldn't be there, and the cameras would show them walking into rooms full of other people, all doing the same meaningless tasks. But here's what really got to me. In the basement footage, I could see myself. The same security uniform, the same face, sitting at a desk identical to mine, watching the same monitors. And on those monitors, I could see another basement level below that one, with another version of me watching another set of screens. I decided to find the basement access. Behind a maintenance door I'd never noticed, stairs led down into darkness. The basement was an exact replica of the floors above. Same offices, same fluorescent lighting, same corporate carpeting. But every office was occupied by someone I'd seen in the security footage, all of them performing their phantom jobs with mechanical precision. I found the security desk, and there I was, watching monitors that showed the building above. When I walked up behind myself, I saw that the screens showed camera feeds of office workers, and on those screens, the office workers were watching their own monitors displaying the same security footage. The other me looked up and smiled. "New shift starting soon," he said, pointing at a schedule on the wall. According to the roster, I'd been working here for 15 years, not 4 months. My name was listed for every night shift in the same handwriting, going back to when the building first opened. I ran back upstairs and checked the employee directory. Every single worker listed, every executive, janitor, receptionist, and security guard was named Casey Morrison. The building had hundreds of employees, but they were all me. I'm sitting in my car now, looking up at Meridian Tower. I can see myself through the windows on every floor, performing every job in the building. And I know that tomorrow night, when the new security guard shows up for their first shift, they'll see all of us on the monitors and think we're just regular people working late. The worst part is the schedule I saw downstairs. My shift doesn't end at 6 a.m. like I thought. According to those records, my shift started 15 years ago, and it's scheduled to continue indefinitely. Every version of me in that building thinks they're working the night shift, but we're all actually permanent residents. I just checked my employee contract, and the start date has changed. It now shows I began working here in 2008. Tomorrow, it'll probably say 2007. Eventually, I won't remember there ever being a time before this job. The lobby doors are automatic, but they only open from the inside. New horror story. The dolls I restored stole children's souls. I boxed up my tools and locked my workshop for the last time tonight, but I can still feel the weight of all those eyes watching me from the shadows. I've been restoring antique dolls and toys for collectors for 8 years now, bringing broken childhood memories back to life, and I just discovered what I've actually been repairing all this time. My name is Knox, and until 4 hours ago, I thought I was preserving history. Wealthy collectors would bring me damaged antique dolls, porcelain heads with hairline cracks, missing limbs, faded paint, torn clothing. I'd spend weeks meticulously repairing each piece, researching period-accurate materials, hand-painting features to match original photographs. It was delicate, meditative work that connected me to craftspeople from centuries past. But tonight I realized why my restored dolls were always so much more valuable than the identical pieces in original condition. It started when Mrs. Whitmore brought me a Victorian mourning doll, one of those creepy porcelain figures made to commemorate dead children. This one was particularly damaged. The face was spiderwebbed with cracks, both arms were missing, and the black funeral dress had rotted away to threads. But the eyes, the glass eyes were perfect. They followed you no matter where you stood in the room. She belonged to my great-grandmother, Mrs. Whitmore explained. The child she was made to remember died of scarlet fever in 1889. I know she's beyond repair, but I was hoping you could at least stabilize her, so she doesn't deteriorate further. I'd worked on mourning dolls before. They were always unsettling, created not as toys but as memorial objects, designed to capture the likeness of children who died too young. But this one felt different. When I placed her on my workbench under the restoration lamps, the temperature in my workshop dropped to 10 degrees. I began with the standard process, photographing the damage, researching the maker's marks, sourcing period-appropriate materials. But when I started cleaning the porcelain head, I noticed something impossible. Underneath layers of grime and age, the cracks weren't random damage, they formed letters. Tiny, precise letters etched into the porcelain in a child's handwriting. Help me. I should have stopped there. Should have called Mrs. Whitmore and explained that the doll was too damaged to restore. But I've always been thorough, and those perfect glass eyes seemed to be pleading with me to continue. As I worked over the following weeks, more messages appeared. When I repaired the left arm, words emerged in the joint where it connected to the torso. I'm still here. When I reconstructed the right arm, the painted fingernails spelled out, "Don't wake the others" in nail polish that shouldn't have existed in 1889. But I kept working. The craftsmanship was too beautiful to abandon, and every repair brought the doll closer to perfection. I hand-stitched a new morning dress from period-accurate silk, painted the features with pigments mixed from original formulas, even replaced individual eyelashes with real hair. The night I finished, the doll was flawless. Better than new, better than she'd ever been, even when first created. I set her on the display shelf and stepped back to admire my work. That's when she blinked. Not the mechanical eye movement of an antique doll, but a slow, deliberate blink, like a living child. Then she turned her head, porcelain grinding against porcelain, and looked directly at me. "Thank you," she whispered in a voice like autumn leaves. "I've been waiting so long for someone to make me whole again." I stumbled backward, knocking over my tool cart. This was impossible. Dolls don't speak. Porcelain doesn't move on its own. But she was sitting up now, smoothing her new dress with perfectly restored hands. "The others are waking up too," she said, pointing toward my storage room. I turned around and nearly screamed. Every doll I'd ever restored was moving. Dozens of them, spanning 3 centuries of craftsmanship, all sitting up on their shelves, all staring at me with grateful, hungry eyes. The French bisque dolls from the 1800s, the composition babies from the 1920s, the hard plastic children from the 1950s, all of them restored to perfection, all of them alive. "We've been sleeping in broken bodies for so long," the mourning doll continued. "Every crack was a prison, every missing piece a chain. But you freed us, you made us beautiful again, you gave us back our voices." That's when I understood what I'd really been doing all these years. I wasn't restoring antique dolls. I was repairing the vessels that trapped the spirits of children who died too young. Every careful repair, every perfect restoration had been strengthening the bonds that held these souls to their porcelain prisons. But the mourning doll wasn't finished. Would you like to know the best part, Knox? Every time you complete a restoration, every time you make one of us whole again, somewhere in the world a living child falls into a deep sleep and never wakes up. Their soul comes to fill the vessel you've so lovingly prepared. My blood turned to ice. "What are you saying?" She smiled with those perfectly painted lips. "We're not the spirits of children who died long ago. We're the spirits of children dying right now. Each restoration is a summoning ritual. Each perfect repair calls a fresh soul from a living body into these beautiful prisons you create for us." I ran to my computer and searched for missing children reports, cross-referencing them with my restoration completion dates. The pattern was undeniable. Every time I'd finished a doll within 24 hours, a child somewhere in the world had fallen into an unexplained coma. Hundreds of them over 8 years. All brain dead, all kept alive by machines while their families hoped for miracles that would never come. "The families think their children are in hospitals," the mourning doll laughed. "But they're here with us, Knox. Every child you've helped us steal. I was going to be sick. Why are you telling me this? Because we have a special request for our final restoration." She pointed to my workbench, where a new doll had appeared. A modern American girl doll with blonde hair and blue eyes wearing a soccer uniform. Attached was a photo of the child it was modeled after. My niece, Emma. My sister's 8-year-old daughter. "She's been asking for you, Knox. Calling out your name in her sleep for weeks now. We told her Uncle Knox was going to make her the most beautiful doll she'd ever seen. And tomorrow, when you finish restoring this vessel, she'll get to live inside it forever." I'm typing this from the hospital parking lot. Emma fell into a coma 3 hours ago, the exact moment I found that doll on my workbench. The doctors say there's no medical explanation, but I know she's not really here anymore. She's waiting in some liminal space, listening to dolls whisper promises about eternal childhood and perfect porcelain skin. The doll version of Emma is sitting on my passenger seat right now, and I can see hairline cracks beginning to form across her face. The restoration is calling to me. My hands are already itching for my tools. Because here's the thing about being good at what you do. Even when you learn it's evil, even when you know it's wrong, the urge to complete beautiful work never really goes away. And Emma's doll is going to be my masterpiece. New horror story. I woke up as 3 different people, the experiment that stole my mind. My name is Dr. Marcus Thorne, and I've been a patient at Meridian Cognitive Institute for 3 months. The problem is, I'm also Dr. Marcus Thorne, the lead researcher. And sometimes I'm Subject 23, a man with no memories at all. The transitions happen without warning. One moment I'm in a hospital gown drawing pictures in therapy. The next I'm wearing a lab coat, analyzing brain scans of experimental memory manipulation subjects. Each identity feels completely real. As a patient, I remember the car accident that brought me here. As a doctor, I remember years of medical training. As Subject 23, I remember nothing except waking up in a white room with electrodes attached to my skull. I started finding notes hidden throughout the facility, written in my own handwriting. Dr. Thorne's notes. Subject 23 shows no awareness of previous identities. Memory erasure successful. Patient Marcus's notes. They're lying about the accident. I've been here 3 years, not 3 months. Subject 23's log. They made me watch videos of a man who looks like me. When I try to speak, they increase the electricity. The horrifying truth became clear when I found all 3 sets of notes in the same hiding place. I'm not 3 different people with memory problems. I'm one person being used to test how many artificial identities can exist in a single mind. Dr. Castellanos isn't my therapist. He's monitoring how well the fabricated personalities hold up under stress. The research equipment I use as Dr. Thorne is non-functional. The other scientists are actors following scripts. But today I found a 4th note in handwriting I don't recognize. The memory protocol was never about multiple identities. It was about fragmenting consciousness for external control. You aren't 3 people. You aren't even one person anymore. You're a prototype. The man you think is Dr. Castellanos is actually the real Dr. Marcus Thorne. You're his experimental copy, created from brain scans taken before his consciousness was uploaded into your body. You are discarded personality fragments given artificial life. You have no real memories because you have no real self. Welcome to the memory protocol Subject 0. You never had a mind to begin with. As I write this, I can feel my memories shifting again. The room is changing. The walls are dissolving. I'm forgetting which identity is supposed to be real. But the worst part is realizing that if I'm just fragments of someone else's consciousness, then who is writing this right now? And why do I hear other voices in my head, begging me to let them take control? The memory protocol wasn't designed to create multiple personalities. It was designed to house multiple souls in a single body. I think I'm about to meet my other residents. New horror story. The footage was never meant to be seen. I deleted everything and burned my laptop tonight, but the videos keep playing behind my eyelids. I've been curating content for the Deep Archive for 6 months, thinking I was preserving banned media, and I just realized what I've actually been collecting. My name is Dex, and until 3 hours ago, I thought I was fighting censorship. A recruiter contacted me through encrypted email, offering $400 a day to help maintain humanity's hidden history. My job was simple: find deleted videos, banned documentaries, and suppressed footage, then upload them to secure servers for academic preservation. The work felt important. I was saving content that powerful people wanted erased: government corruption exposés, corporate whistleblower videos, independent journalism that mainstream media wouldn't touch. Every file I preserved was a victory against censorship. But tonight, I discovered what happened to the content after I uploaded it. It started when I received an unusual request. Locate and preserve home security footage from 23 Maple Street, dated March 15th to the 20th, 2023. Family reported missing, footage confiscated by authorities. I found the files on a leaked police server. 5 days of normal family life. Parents cooking dinner, kids doing homework, everyone going about their routines. Nothing seemed worth preserving until I watched day 5. The family started acting strangely. They moved in perfect synchronization like dancers following choreography. When one person sat down, they all sat. When someone stood up, everyone stood. By the final hour of footage, they were walking in single file toward the basement, moving like robots. The video ended with them disappearing downstairs. They were never seen again. I uploaded the footage as requested, but something made me check the server logs afterward. The file had been downloaded 1,147 times within the first hour, but when I traced the download locations, my blood went cold. Every single download came from a house where a family had recently gone missing. I started investigating other files I'd preserved. A banned children's educational video that I'd archived last month. Downloaded exclusively by elementary schools where entire classes had vanished during field trips. A suppressed medical training video, accessed only by hospitals reporting unexplained patient disappearances. The Deep Archive wasn't preserving banned content. It was distributing instruction manuals. I accessed the main database and found thousands of videos I'd helped preserve, each with the same download pattern. People would watch them, then disappear. But worse than that, I found a folder labeled with my name containing recordings I'd never seen before. Security footage from my own apartment. The videos showed me sleeping, but I wasn't alone. Every night for the past month, people had been entering my bedroom. Men and women in business suits, moving with that same synchronized walk I'd seen in the Maple Street footage. They would stand around my bed for hours, watching me sleep, occasionally whispering coordinates to each other. In the most recent video dated last night, one of them leaned down and whispered directly into my ear, "Ready for collection." I tried to delete everything, but the files kept reappearing. Each time I cleared the database, new videos appeared. More families, more missing people, more synchronized movements spreading like a virus through every community where the content had been downloaded. Then I found the final folder, Current Operations. It contained live feeds from security cameras around my neighborhood. I could see them now, people walking in perfect formation down every street, all heading toward my apartment building. Neighbors I'd known for years, moving with mechanical precision, their eyes reflecting light like black mirrors. My front door just unlocked by itself. The footsteps on my stairs sound like a marching army, but I know it's just my neighbors coming to collect me. The videos I've been preserving weren't documentation of disappearances. They were recruitment tools, showing people how to move, how to think, how to stop being human. I can hear them outside my door now, whispering the same coordinates I heard in my sleep. Part of me wants to resist, but the bigger part just wants to join the synchronized walking, to stop thinking for myself, to become part of whatever collective consciousness I've been helping to spread. The door's opening. They're all smiling the same smile. It's time to go. New horror story. I walked into the hospital backrooms and never came back. I've kept this to myself for 4 years now, but every time I walk through a hospital corridor, I feel that same cold dread creeping up my spine. The service elevator is making that grinding noise again, and I can smell that antiseptic mixed with something else. Something that doesn't belong. It takes me right back to St. Catherine's Medical Center, to what happened in the tunnels beneath the building. It was October 2020, middle of the pandemic. I was working maintenance at the hospital, mostly night shifts because they needed someone to service the equipment when the wards were quieter. The pay was good and I didn't mind the underground work. The service tunnels connected every building in the complex. Miles of concrete corridors lined with pipes, electrical conduits, and air ducts. Most staff never saw them. Just maintenance, security, and the occasional lost delivery person. I knew those tunnels like my own house. Until the night they changed. I was checking the main water line around 2 a.m. when I noticed the hallway felt longer than usual. Not much, just a few extra steps to reach the junction where the tunnel split toward the east wing. At first I thought I was tired. 12-hour shifts will mess with your head. But when I reached the junction, there were 4 corridors instead of 3. I stood there staring at the extra passage. Same concrete walls, same yellow safety lights mounted every 20 feet, same smell of industrial cleaning solution and old metal. But I'd been down this exact spot hundreds of times. There were only supposed to be 3 tunnels. I checked my phone. No signal, which was normal down there. But something felt off about the silence. Usually you could hear the building above. Elevator motors, HVAC systems, the distant murmur of the ICU. Tonight, nothing. I decided to explore the new corridor. Maybe construction had opened up an old section I'd forgotten about. 20 feet in, I passed a door marked Storage B7. I'd never seen that designation before. Our storage rooms were numbered, not lettered. 50 feet further, another door. Storage B14, then B21. The numbers were jumping by sevens, but the doors were evenly spaced. That's not how storage rooms work. I tried one of the handles, unlocked. Inside was a room identical to our supply closets. Metal shelving, industrial lighting, concrete floor. But instead of medical supplies, the shelves held things that made no sense. Old patient charts from the 1950s. Wheelchairs with wooden wheels. Glass bottles filled with liquids I couldn't identify. I backed out and kept walking. The corridor curved slightly to the left, which was impossible. The building's blueprints showed straight lines only. But there it was, a gentle bend that led to more doors, more yellow lights disappearing into the distance. That's when I started hearing the pages, faint at first, like someone calling for a doctor over the intercom system. But we were too deep for the PA system to reach, and the voices sounded wrong. Old-fashioned, formal, using medical terms I didn't recognize. Dr. Morrison to Surgical Suite B23. Dr. Morrison to Surgical Suite B23. There was no Surgical Suite B23. Our operating rooms were numbered 1 through 12. I turned around to head back, but the corridor behind me had changed. Instead of the straight path I'd walked down, it now curved to the right. The door numbers were different too. Storage B28, B35, B42. All still jumping by sevens. The pages kept coming, echoing off the concrete walls. Doctors' names I'd never heard, departments that didn't exist. Sometimes the voices overlapped, creating a chorus of medical announcements that made my skin crawl. I started jogging back toward what I thought was the main junction. But every intersection I reached had 4 corridors instead of 3. Every door led to rooms filled with obsolete medical equipment and files from decades past. My radio crackled with static. Through the white noise, I could hear more pages, but these were different. Desperate. Code Blue in Pediatric Wing B. Code Blue in Pediatric Wing B. All available staff respond. We didn't have a Pediatric Wing B. Hell, we didn't have a pediatric wing at all. The corridor started sloping downward, leading deeper underground than the hospital's foundation should allow. The yellow light stretched ahead infinitely, punctuated by those identical doors with their impossible numbering system. When I finally found an exit sign, it led to a stairwell I'd never seen before. Emergency lighting guided me up 3 flights to a door marked Ground Floor, East Wing. I burst through into the familiar hospital lobby, gasping like I'd been underwater. The security guard looked up from his desk. Everything okay, Martinez? You look like you saw a ghost. I checked my phone. 2:15 a.m. I'd been down there for 15 minutes, but it felt like hours. Just checking the water main, I said. I requested a transfer to day shift the following week. But yesterday, I finally got curious enough to look up my old employment records at St. Catherine's. I wanted to put this whole thing behind me, maybe even laugh about it. The HR woman was very helpful. She pulled up my file, then got a strange look on her face. Mr. Martinez, she said slowly, according to our records, you went missing during your shift on October 15th, 2020. Security found your equipment in the basement tunnels, but you never came back up. She turned the computer screen toward me. There was my employee photo, and underneath it, a red stamp. Missing, presumed dead. Sir, she whispered, today's October 15th, 2024. You've been gone for exactly 4 years. I'm writing this from my apartment, the same apartment I've been living in this whole time. My reflection looks back at me from the bathroom mirror. My bills get paid automatically. My neighbors wave hello. But when I called my sister an hour ago, she started crying and hung up. And I just realized I haven't eaten anything in 4 years. I haven't slept. I don't even remember leaving the hospital that night. The pages are starting again. I can hear them calling through the walls. Maintenance to storage room B7. Martinez to storage room B7. I think it's time to go back. New horror story. I've kept this secret for 60 years, and it's finally killing me. I've carried this secret for 60 years, and it's been eating me alive from the inside. The cancer in my lungs has nothing on the rot this story has left in my soul. This is about my sister Sarah and what they did to her in the underneath. She was 8 when it started, and I was 10. We lived in that cursed farmhouse outside Millbrook in 1967, where the previous family had abandoned it after their own children went missing. Sarah loved hide and seek, but looking back, I don't think she was the one choosing the hiding spots. She'd disappear into places that defied physics. I once found her inside a wall cavity that was only 3 inches wide. Another time, she emerged from under floorboards in a room with no basement access. When I asked how she fit, she'd just smile with too many teeth showing. October 15th was when they finally took her completely. We were playing near the old root cellar and Sarah went to hide. I counted to 60 like always, then started searching. 3 hours later, I was screaming her name into an empty forest. The sheriff's dogs went crazy near the root cellar. They wouldn't go down the stairs, just stood at the entrance whimpering and backing away with their tails between their legs. One deputy tried to force his German shepherd down there. The dog bit him and ran home. For 3 days, our house was a circus of searchers and grief. Mom stopped eating entirely. Dad developed a nervous tic where he'd count to 60 over and over under his breath. On the 4th night, Sarah came back. But what crawled out of that root cellar wasn't my sister anymore. The thing wearing Sarah's face was wrong in ways that made my stomach turn. Her skin had a gray undertone, like meat that's been left out too long. When she smiled, her teeth looked sharper, and there were too many of them crammed into her small mouth. Her eyes weren't just gray, they were colorless, like looking into dirty water. "Tommy, I won the game," she said, but her voice echoed like she was speaking from the bottom of a well. When Mom hugged her, Sarah felt cold and damp, like she'd been buried in wet earth. "Where were you, baby?" Mom sobbed. "Playing with the other children. They taught me new games." Sarah's new games were different, dark. I'd find dead birds arranged in perfect circles in her room. Mice with their eyes removed, lined up by size under her bed. She'd laugh when I discovered them, that hollow echo laugh that made my teeth ache. "The children underneath showed me," she'd say. "They said I'm getting better at the quiet game." She stopped eating regular food. I caught her in the kitchen at night, chewing on something that looked like grave dirt mixed with earthworms. When she saw me watching, she offered me some. The black stuff was moving between her teeth. Sarah started bringing things up from underneath, small bones that she'd arranged in patterns on her windowsill. Strips of moldy fabric that smelled like decay. Once, a child's tooth with the root still bloody. "Presents," she'd say when I asked. "From my new friends." But the worst part was the whispering. Every night I'd hear voices coming from inside the walls. Children's voices, but wrong somehow. They spoke in overlapping whispers, saying things like, "Come down deeper and bring the warm one." Sarah would whisper back, having full conversations with whatever was lurking in the darkness below our house. One night I heard her clearly. "Tommy's almost ready. He's been listening. Soon he'll want to play too." I followed her to the root cellar the next night, staying far enough back that she wouldn't notice. What I saw there still wakes me up screaming. Sarah wasn't alone. There were other children, or things that had been children once. They moved wrong, like their joints had been taken apart and put back together by someone who didn't understand how bodies work. Their faces were pale and soft, like they were melting. Some had extra fingers, others had holes where their eyes should be. They were passing something between them, taking turns biting it. In the moonlight, I could see it was still moving. Sarah was teaching them a song. "Ring around the rosy, pocket full of bones, ashes, ashes, we all fall down." But they sang down, like it went on forever, their voices disappearing into the earth below. When I tried to back away, I stepped on a branch. Every head turned toward me at once, moving with the same mechanical precision. Sarah smiled with her mouth full of whatever they'd been sharing. "Tommy came to play," she announced. "I told you he would." I ran back to the house and barricaded my door. The next morning, Sarah was gone. This time, she left something behind. In her bed, arranged in the shape of a small body, were dozens of finger bones. Child-sized, yellowed with age. At the head of the bone arrangement was a note written in what looked like dried blood. "Thank you for Sarah. She fits perfectly now. Tommy can come whenever he's ready. We'll save a space." Our parents found the bones and called the police. The sheriff counted them, enough for at least 6 different children, all approximately 8 years old. We moved that same week. Our parents never spoke of Sarah again, telling people she'd died of pneumonia. But I knew better. Whatever was underneath that house had been collecting children for decades. Sarah wasn't the first, and she wouldn't be the last. For 60 years, I thought it was over. Then my great-niece Emma went missing last week. 8 years old, same age as Sarah. They found her clothes arranged in a perfect circle around the old root cellar, along with a note written in a child's handwriting. Aunt Sarah says, "Hi, Uncle Tommy." She's been waiting for you to come play. Emma loves it here. The games never end. But here's the part that's going to kill me before the cancer does. Yesterday, I got a package with no return address. Inside was a tooth, small, white, with the root still fresh. Emma's tooth. And underneath it, written in that same bloody handwriting, "Your turn, Tommy. Come home." I can hear them whispering in my walls again. They've been patient, but patience has limits. I'm 93 years old, and I think it's finally time to play. New horror story. Signal 1247, the frequency of final words. My name is Alex Morrison, and I am a ham radio operator who discovered a frequency that broadcasts the final words of people who are about to die. I have been listening to Signal 1247 for 6 weeks, and tonight I heard my own voice coming through the static. It began during a late-night session in my basement radio room. I was scanning through unused frequencies, searching for interesting transmissions from around the world. At exactly 12:47 a.m., I picked up a clear signal on an empty band that should have contained nothing but dead air. A woman's voice emerged from the static, speaking in panicked whispers about someone breaking into her house. She described hiding in her bedroom closet while footsteps moved through the hallway outside. Her transmission ended with a scream that cut off mid-breath, followed by absolute silence. I tried to respond to offer help or ask for her location, but the frequency had gone dead. The next morning, I searched local news reports and found a story about Margaret Kellerman, a 62-year-old woman found murdered in her home. The timeline matched perfectly with the transmission I had intercepted. Every night at 12:47 a.m., Signal 1247 would broadcast another death. A construction worker falling from scaffolding, describing the sensation of falling through the air before impact. A drowning swimmer calling out coordinates that led to nothing but empty ocean. A car accident victim naming the intersection where his vehicle would be found, wrapped around a telephone pole. Each transmission was exactly the same. Clear voices speaking their final thoughts in the moments before death, always lasting between 30 seconds and 2 minutes. Always ending with the sound that confirmed their demise. I began recording the transmissions and researching the deaths. Every single voice belonged to someone who had died at the exact time I heard their transmission. But the locations were scattered across different time zones, different countries, sometimes different continents. The signal was somehow collecting the final moments of dying people from around the entire planet. The voices came from car crashes, murders, accidents, heart attacks, and suicides. They spoke in dozens of languages, but I could understand every word as if they were speaking directly into my mind. The construction worker begged his wife to forgive him for working late. The drowning swimmer apologized to his children for not being a better father. The car accident victim whispered directions to a hidden safe containing money for his family. After 3 weeks of listening, I realized the transmissions were not random. They followed a pattern based on the emotional intensity of the final moments. The signal was drawn to deaths involving extreme guilt, regret, or unfinished business. It was harvesting the psychic energy released when people died with heavy hearts. But the pattern revealed something more disturbing. The deaths were not random accidents or crimes. They were connected. The construction worker had been pushed. The swimmer had been held underwater. The car accident victim had been forced off the road. Someone was orchestrating these deaths and collecting their final transmissions. Last week, I detected background noise in several recordings that revealed the truth. Beneath the dying voices, I could hear the faint sound of keyboard typing and electronic beeping. The transmissions were not being passively received. They were being actively recorded by sophisticated equipment operated by whoever was causing these deaths. Signal 1247 was not picking up the final words of random victims. It was broadcasting the death recordings of a serial killer who murdered people specifically to harvest their final moments of consciousness. But tonight, everything changed. At 12:47 a.m., Signal 1247 transmitted my own voice. I heard myself describing the smell of gas filling my basement radio room. I listened to my own panicked breathing as I tried to reach the stairs but found my legs too weak to carry me. I experienced my own final words as I realized someone had been pumping carbon monoxide through my ventilation system while I recorded this message. The transmission is still playing. I can hear my own death happening in real time, broadcast on the frequency I have been monitoring for 6 weeks. But here is what terrifies me most. I am still alive, still sitting in my radio room, still breathing normally. The gas leak has not happened yet. Signal 1247 does not broadcast the final words of people who are dying. It broadcasts the final words of people who are about to die. My transmission just ended with the sound of my body hitting the floor. I can smell gas beginning to seep through the vents. The timer on my equipment shows 12:46 a.m. 1 minute remaining. If someone finds this recording, remember that the killer is still broadcasting. He is still collecting final moments. The broadcast didn't end with me hitting the floor. It ended with the sound of someone else tuning in. New horror story. The reflection in my mirror is trying to replace me. My reflection blinked before I did. It was just for a split second. I was brushing my teeth before work, half awake, when I caught it in my peripheral vision. My reflection in the bathroom mirror blinked, paused, then I blinked a moment later, like I was copying it instead of the other way around. I stared at myself for a full minute, but everything looked normal. Same brown hair, same tired eyes, same small scar above my left eyebrow from when I fell off my bike as a kid. I chalked it up to being exhausted from pulling double shifts at the warehouse. But it happened again the next morning, and this time I was paying attention. My reflection smiled before I did. A small, barely noticeable upturn of the lips that appeared on the mirror me's face a full second before I felt my own mouth move. When I stopped smiling, my reflection kept going for just a beat too long. I started watching myself more carefully. In every mirror, every reflective surface, every window at night, I was looking for that tiny delay, that fraction of a second where my reflection seemed to be leading instead of following. It was subtle at first. My reflection would turn its head slightly before I turned mine. It would raise its hand a millisecond early. Sometimes it would mouth words while my lips stayed still, like it was trying to tell me something I couldn't hear. Then I noticed my reflection was wearing different clothes. I was standing in front of my bedroom mirror wearing a blue t-shirt, but my reflection was wearing red. I looked down at myself. Definitely blue. Looked back up, my reflection was now blue too, but for that split second, it had been wearing something else entirely. I started documenting everything. Photos of mirrors, videos of myself moving in front of reflective surfaces, notes about every discrepancy I could find. But somehow, the camera never caught the delays I was seeing. In every photo and video, my reflection appeared normal, perfectly synchronized. That's when I realized my reflection was learning. It was getting better at mimicking me, learning to hide the delays when I was actively looking for them. But sometimes, when I caught it off guard, I'd see it doing things I wasn't doing. I watched it comb its hair while my hands were at my sides. I watched it practice facial expressions while I stood perfectly still. Once I caught it looking around my bedroom like it was memorizing the layout, its eyes moving independently of mine. The worst part was realizing that my reflection was happier than I was. While I grew increasingly paranoid and exhausted, my reflection looked more confident, more alive. Its smile was brighter, its posture straighter. It was becoming a better version of me. Last week I started losing time. I'd black out for minutes at a stretch, then come back to awareness standing in front of a mirror with no memory of how I got there. During these blackouts, I felt like I was watching my life from very far away, like seeing everything through thick glass. My coworkers started commenting on how much better I seemed. "You're like a whole new person," my supervisor said. "More confident, more focused. Whatever you're doing, keep it up." But I wasn't doing anything. During my conscious moments, I felt more anxious and disconnected than ever. It was only during the blackouts that I apparently seemed better. Yesterday, I figured out what was happening during those lost hours. I set up a camera to record myself while I stood in front of my bathroom mirror, then deliberately let myself zone out. When I watched the footage back, I saw myself standing motionless for 20 minutes, while my reflection moved around freely on the other side of the glass. It was going through my medicine cabinet, examining my toothbrush, practicing using my voice by silently mouthing words. And then, in the final seconds of the video, I watched my reflection step forward and press its hand against the inside of the mirror. On my side, I saw my own hand rise up and press against the glass from the outside. For just a moment, we were both touching the same surface from opposite sides. That's when the switch happened. In the video, I watched myself smile, but I remembered being the one on the other side of the mirror, watching my body smile back at me. For those few seconds, I was the reflection, trapped behind the glass, while something else wore my face and stood in my bathroom. The blackouts are getting longer now. Hours pass where I'm aware but not in control, watching my life continue without me while I'm stuck on the wrong side of every reflective surface. My reflection, the thing that's wearing my body now, is living my life better than I ever did. It's more social, more successful, more confident. Everyone loves the new me, except the new me isn't me at all. I'm writing this during one of my few remaining conscious moments when I'm back in my body instead of trapped behind the glass. But I can feel it trying to take over again, pushing me back toward the mirrors, back toward the other side where I belong now. Soon the switch will be permanent. My reflection will have my life, my job, my friends, my body. And I'll be the one trapped behind the glass, watching someone else live my life while I practice their expressions and wait for the next person naive enough to stare too long at their own reflection. The mirror in front of me is calling. I can see myself in it, but that's not me anymore. That's my replacement. And it's smiling. New horror story. Never call the hooded man at midnight. The candle flame turned black, and I knew I'd made a terrible mistake. 3 hours of chanting, 3 hours of staring into that cracked bathroom mirror, and now something was staring back at me that wasn't my reflection. I'd found the ritual buried in an old forum thread, the kind of place where desperate people share desperate solutions. My girlfriend Evangeline had been missing for 2 weeks, and the police had stopped returning my calls. The ritual promised answers, a way to see beyond the veil to find what was lost. All it required was a mirror, a white candle, and 3 hours of reciting the same phrase over and over. I call upon the hooded man to show me what lies beyond. I'd chosen the bathroom in my apartment, windows covered with black sheets. The mirror above the sink was perfect, old and slightly warped, like looking through water. I lit the candle at midnight and began. For the first hour, nothing happened. Just my own tired face staring back, stubble dark against pale skin, my voice growing hoarse from repetition. By the second hour, shadows seemed to move in the corners of the reflection, but I told myself it was exhaustion. Then the candle flame changed. It flickered from yellow to deep purple, then to that impossible black. A flame that somehow absorbed light instead of giving it. My reflection began to fade, becoming translucent like old film. That's when I saw him. A tall figure in a dark hood stood behind me in the mirror. Not in the bathroom, just in the reflection. His face was completely hidden, but I could feel his attention like ice water in my veins. "You seek what is lost," he said, though his lips never moved. The voice came from everywhere and nowhere. "Yes," I whispered, my throat dry. "Evangeline, I need to find Evangeline." He raised one pale hand and beckoned. The mirror began to ripple like water. Before I could think, before I could stop myself, I reached out and touched the glass. My hand passed through. The sensation was like falling through cold honey. Reality stretched and warped around me until I found myself standing in a place that shouldn't exist. It looked like my city, but wrong. The buildings were the same, but they stretched impossibly high into a gray sky that had no sun. Streets extended in directions that hurt to think about. Not just north and south, but angles that didn't have names. Traffic lights blinked in colors I'd never seen before. And there were people. Hundreds of them, walking in perfect silence along sidewalks that sometimes became walls or ceilings without warning. They all wore the same expression, blank, peaceful, like sleepwalkers. "This is where the lost come," the hooded man said. He stood beside me now, real as breathing. "Those who disappear, who vanish without explanation. They find their way here eventually." I watched the silent crowd, searching every face. Then I saw her. Evangeline walked past us wearing the same clothes she'd disappeared in. Her eyes were empty, fixed on something I couldn't see. She moved with that same dreamy purpose as all the others. "Evangeline!" I called out, running toward her. She turned at the sound of my voice, and for a moment, just a moment, recognition flickered in her eyes. Her mouth opened as if to speak, but no sound came out. Instead, she pointed behind me with a look of pure terror. I spun around. The hooded man was no longer alone. Dozens of figures in dark robes surrounded us, all perfectly still, all watching, waiting. "You have seen what you came to see," the original said. "Now you can join them, or what?" "Returned. But the price for leaving is forgetting. You cannot take this knowledge back with you." The hooded figures began to close in. Evangeline grabbed my hand and I felt her trying to pull me deeper into that twisted city. Her touch was cold, desperate. I had seconds to choose. I thought about Evangeline, about saving her. But something in her empty eyes told me she was already gone. Had been gone the moment she arrived in this place. What stood before me was just an echo, a shadow wearing her face. I yanked my hand free and dove backward toward the mirror that still hung in the air like a doorway. The last thing I heard was her voice, finally working again, screaming my name as I fell through the glass. I woke up on my bathroom floor. The candle had burned down to nothing. The mirror showed only my own reflection. I never found Evangeline. Some mornings I wake up with the feeling I've forgotten something important, but I can never remember what. New horror story. La Pascualita, the bride who blinked. The mannequin blinked at me through the shop window, and I nearly dropped my camera. I'm standing here on this empty street in Chihuahua at 2 a.m., and I swear to God she just looked right at me. Let me back up. I'm a wedding photographer from Phoenix, and 3 months ago I got hired for this destination wedding in Mexico. The bride wanted authentic Mexican venues, so I flew down early to scout locations. That's how I ended up walking the historic district of Chihuahua, looking for that perfect colonial backdrop. I was checking out Paseo Bolivar when I noticed the bridal shop. Casa de Novias. The window display was stunning, this vintage mannequin in the most incredible 1930s wedding dress I'd ever seen. But something about her made me stop cold. Her skin had this warm, lifelike quality that modern mannequins never achieve. The way the lace fell across her shoulders looked natural, not posed. Even her hair seemed to catch the light like it was real. I snapped a few photos for reference, thinking my bride might want to recreate the vintage look. When I reviewed the images later that night, I noticed something strange. In every shot, the mannequin appeared to be looking directly at my camera, even when I'd photographed her from different angles. The next morning, I asked the hotel concierge about the shop. "Ah, sí, la Pascualita," he said, his expression suddenly serious. "She's been there since 1930, very famous around here." "Famous for what?" "People say she moves at night, changes positions. Some even claim she walks around the shop after closing." He crossed himself quickly. "My grandmother worked there once. She said the mannequin's eyes would follow her while she cleaned." I laughed it off, but curiosity got the better of me. That evening, I researched the legend online. The story went that a young bride named Pascuala Esparza had died on her wedding day in March 1930, bitten by a black widow spider. Her mother, who owned the bridal shop, had been so devastated that she preserved her daughter's body and displayed it in the window as a mannequin. The details were too specific to be entirely fiction. Birth records, death certificates, newspaper clippings from 1930. Whether or not the body was actually preserved, something had definitely happened to Pascuala Esparza. I decided to do some late-night photography. If the mannequin really did move, I'd capture it on camera. I set up across the street around midnight, using a telephoto lens to get clear shots of the display window. For the first hour, nothing happened. The mannequin stood perfectly still in her ivory gown, hands folded, eyes staring straight ahead. Then around 1 a.m., I noticed a change. Her head had turned slightly to the left, just a few degrees, but enough that I could tell the difference. I kept shooting, checking my camera's timestamp against my previous photos. Over the next 30 minutes, she moved 3 more times. Small movements, a shifted shoulder, a tilted head, fingers uncurling. But movements nonetheless. My hands were shaking as I reviewed the images. This was impossible. Mannequins don't move on their own. At 2 a.m., I decided to get closer. I crossed the street and approached the window, camera ready. That's when she blinked. I stumbled backward, nearly falling into the street. When I looked again, she was staring directly at me through the glass. Her lips parted slightly, and I could swear I heard a whisper. "Por qué me fotografías? Why are you photographing me?" My breath caught in my throat as the air around me turned icy, and for a split second it felt like invisible hands were pressing against my chest, holding me in place. I ran back to my hotel and didn't sleep until sunrise. The next day I tried to rationalize what I'd seen. Trick of the light. Stress from traveling. My imagination running wild after reading about the legend. But when I went to delete the photos, I found something that made my blood run cold. In the final image I'd taken, the moment right before she blinked, there was a reflection in the shop window. Not my reflection, someone else's. A woman in a wedding dress standing directly behind me. But I had been alone on that street. I flew back to Phoenix the next morning, cutting my scouting trip short. I told my clients I'd found everything I needed. That was 3 months ago. Last week I got a package with no return address. Inside was a wedding photo from 1930. A young bride in an ivory dress standing in front of Casa de Novias. The woman in the photo looked exactly like the mannequin in the window. On the back, someone had written in faded ink, Pascuala Esparza, March 15th, 1930, still waiting for her photographer. In the final image, my hands went cold, because Pascualita wasn't standing in the shop window anymore. She was standing right beside me, her hand resting on my shoulder. New horror story, trapped in the spaces between reality. My name is Noah, and I have been trapped in spaces between spaces for 73 days. I am recording this message on my phone, which somehow still has battery despite the impossibility of that fact. If someone finds this recording, do not try to find me. Do not investigate the places I will describe. Some doors should never be opened. It started when I got lost in the Westfield shopping center after closing time. I had been working late in the food court, finishing a report on my laptop, when security accidentally locked me inside. The mall after hours is a different creature entirely. Without the crowds and noise, it becomes something else, something wrong. I tried calling for help, but my phone showed no signal despite being indoors where I always had full bars. The emergency exits were locked, their red lights casting everything in an ominous glow. I decided to wait until morning in the central atrium, but when I tried to retrace my steps, the layout had changed. Corridors that should have led back to the food court instead opened onto identical hallways lined with empty storefronts. The mannequins in the windows seemed to track my movement with their plastic eyes. The escalators continued running despite the power being shut off, their mechanical humming echoing through the vast emptiness. I walked for hours through spaces that defied the mall's original architecture. Hallways stretched impossibly long, filled with the same beige carpet and fluorescent lighting that flickered in patterns that almost seemed like Morse code. I passed the same Hudson News kiosk 17 times, each time noticing that the magazines had different covers showing events that had not yet happened. Then I found the door marked Authorized Personnel Only that led to the real between places. Beyond that door lay a network of spaces that existed in the gaps between normal reality. Endless office buildings with no companies, just cubicles filled with computers that typed messages to no one. Hotel corridors that stretched for miles, lined with doors that opened onto the same empty room. Airport terminals where the departure boards showed flights to destinations that did not exist. I have been walking through these liminal spaces for over 2 months now. I encounter no other people, but I am not alone. Something moves through these places, something that feeds on the discomfort and wrongness that permeates every surface. I hear it in the distance sometimes, a sound like furniture being dragged across linoleum floors. The worst part is the realization that came to me last week. These spaces are not separate from our world. They exist underneath it, in the moments between footsteps, in the pause between words, in the space between thoughts. Every empty hallway you have ever walked down connects to this network. Every time you have felt that uncanny wrongness in a deserted building, you were sensing the proximity of the between places. But the most terrifying discovery came yesterday when I found a door that led back to the real world. Through the glass, I could see the Westfield shopping center during normal hours, filled with shoppers and noise and life. I tried to open the door, but it would not budge. On the other side of the glass, I saw myself. Another version of me going about my normal life, completely unaware that the real me was trapped in the spaces between reality. I watched myself finish my report in the food court. I watched myself pack up my laptop and walk toward the exit. I watched myself glance at a door marked "Authorized Personnel Only" with curious eyes. I pounded on the glass and screamed warnings, but the other me could not hear. He reached for the handle of that door, and I realized the horrible truth. This has happened before. Many times. I am caught in a loop, watching infinite versions of myself discover the between places and become trapped, while new versions replace me in the real world. The door is opening again. Another version of me is about to enter the liminal spaces, and I will have to watch him realize what I have realized. But this time, I notice something different. The other me is not alone. He is with someone I recognize. He is with you. You are about to open that door. Do not open that door. Please do not. New horror story. The village where children never grow up. I drove into Raven's Hollow, expecting to debunk another rural myth for my anthropology research. The legend was particularly absurd. A village where children never aged past their 10th birthday, remaining forever young while their parents grew old and died around them. Pure folklore, the kind of story that emerges when isolated communities try to explain genetic disorders or high infant mortality rates. The village sat in a valley so deep that cell phone towers couldn't reach it, surrounded by mountains that seemed to lean inward like protective arms. Main Street consisted of weathered buildings that looked frozen in the 1950s. A general store, a post office, a white church with a bell tower that pierced the perpetual mist hanging over the valley. What struck me immediately was the silence. No playground laughter, no children riding bicycles, no school buses rumbling through town. For a place supposedly filled with eternal children, Raven's Hollow seemed remarkably quiet. I introduced myself to Martha Henley, the postmaster, explaining my research into Appalachian folklore. She was a thin woman in her 70s with nervous hands that constantly fidgeted with her mail sorting. Folklore, she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. That's a nice way to put it, I suppose. When I asked about the children, her hands went still. You'll meet them soon enough, she said. They're always curious about visitors. That evening at the boarding house, I met my landlord, Robert Quinn, a man who appeared to be in his 60s despite his driver's license showing an age of 42. When I mentioned the discrepancy, he laughed, but the sound held no humor. Time moves different here, he said. You'll understand eventually. The first child I encountered was standing outside my window the next morning. A boy with dark hair and intelligent eyes wearing clothes that looked handmade but well-maintained. He appeared to be about 10 years old, exactly as the legend claimed. When I opened the window to speak to him, he smiled with the kind of patience I'd never seen in a child. You're the folklore man, he said. His voice carried an odd weight, like someone much older speaking through a child's vocal cords. I'm Timothy. I've been waiting to meet you. Throughout the day, more children appeared. Sarah, with her old-fashioned dress and knowing smirk. Michael, who spoke about events from the 1970s as if he'd lived through them. Emma, who discussed literature with the insight of a graduate student. They all looked 10, but their eyes held decades of experience. By the third day, I'd documented 17 children, all appearing the same age, all displaying knowledge and behavioral patterns completely inconsistent with their apparent youth. When I asked about their parents, they exchanged glances before Timothy answered. Most of our parents are gone now, he said simply. They got old. We stayed the same. The truth began emerging when I accessed the church records dating back to 1892. Birth certificates, baptismal records, death certificates, all meticulously maintained by generations of pastors. The pattern was impossible to ignore. The same children appeared in photographs spanning decades. Timothy in a 1987 school photo, unchanged from how he looked today. Sarah in a 1979 Christmas pageant, wearing the same expression of ancient wisdom. Michael standing beside a gravestone in a 1995 cemetery photo, mourning the death of someone listed as his parent. But the most disturbing discovery was in the church basement, where I found medical records hidden behind stacks of old hymnals. detailed documentation of a procedure performed on every child in the village on their 10th birthday. The records used clinical terminology, but the implications were clear. Surgical intervention to halt the aging process, followed by treatments to maintain cellular stasis. The procedures had been performed for over a century, refined with each generation, perfected to the point where the children never showed signs of physical deterioration. I confronted Timothy in the cemetery where he'd been placing fresh flowers on a grave marked Harold Quinn, 1943-2018, beloved father. "The procedure," I said. "It worked too well, didn't it?" Timothy's smile never wavered, but something shifted behind his eyes. Something predatory and utterly without empathy. "Oh, yes," he said, his voice taking on the sing-song quality children use when they're excited about a secret. "It stopped everything. Our bodies, our growth, our moral development. We're still 10 years old up here." He tapped his temple. 10 years old forever. The implications hit me like cold water. The emotional reasoning of a child, the impulse control of a child, the cruel curiosity of a child, but with 8 decades of experience and no adult supervision. "We get bored so easily," Sarah said, appearing beside me with that unnaturally silent movement I'd noticed in all of them. "Adults are fun for a while, but they always get scared and stop playing." More children emerged from behind headstones, surrounding me in a loose circle. Their faces held the same expression, not threatening, but eager, like kids who'd found a new toy. "The last folklore man lasted 3 weeks," Michael said conversationally. "We played hide and seek. He was very good at hiding, but we're better at seeking." Timothy clapped his hands together, the sound sharp in the cemetery air. "Should we show him the special place, Sarah? Where we keep the grown-ups who try to leave? Can we keep this one longer?" Emma asked, bouncing on her toes with excitement. "I want to show him my dolls, the ones that used to be people." The medical records hadn't told the whole story. The procedure had preserved their bodies, but it had also trapped their minds in the developmental stage of children. Children who had learned that adults were fragile, temporary things to be played with until they broke. As they began closing in, their movements coordinated with the practiced ease of a pack that had done this many times before, Timothy smiled with genuine childlike joy. "Don't worry, Mr. Folklore Man," he said. "We'll take very good care of you. We always take good care of our toys." The last thing I wrote in my research notes, found weeks later by searchers, was, "They're not the victims here. We are." But by then, I had learned to play their games, learned the rules that kept me alive a little longer each day, learned to appreciate the terrible innocence of immortal children who had never learned that some games should end. And sometimes late at night, I catch myself hoping the next visitor takes longer to find. New horror story. My perfect roommate left salt lines under her door every night. Emma always left the kitchen light on when she came home from work, and I loved watching her silhouette move behind the frosted glass as she made dinner. We'd been roommates for 8 months, splitting the rent on this old Victorian house downtown. She was perfect. Quiet, clean, never brought guys over. Sometimes I'd catch her looking over her shoulder when she thought no one was watching, like she was nervous about something, but I figured that was just city living getting to her. I developed feelings for her pretty quickly. The way she hummed while doing dishes, how she'd curl up on the couch with her laptop, typing furiously on what I assumed were work emails. She wore this vanilla perfume that lingered in rooms long after she left, mixing with the musty smell of the old house in a way that made my chest tight. The problem was Emma seemed scared of me. Not scared exactly, but jumpy. She'd flinch when I walked into a room, even when I tried to be quiet. Sometimes she'd stop mid-conversation with someone on the phone and just stare at empty air, her face pale. I started wondering if she'd had a bad experience with a previous roommate. I tried being the perfect housemate. I kept my music low, cleaned up after myself, never hogged the bathroom. But the kitchen light flickered constantly whenever I was near it, which seemed to make her more nervous. She started eating out more often, avoiding the kitchen altogether. "Emma, are you okay?" I asked one evening when she rushed past me in the hallway without even a nod. She didn't answer. She never answered when I spoke directly to her. I figured she was just shy, maybe intimidated by having a male roommate. Some women were like that, so I gave her space, tried to be less obvious about my feelings, but I couldn't help watching her through the gap under my bedroom door when she paced the hallway at night, whispering into her phone about cold spots and feeling watched. The house was old. Of course there were cold spots. Last Tuesday, Emma didn't come home from work. I waited until midnight, watching through the living room window for her car, the kitchen light flickering like a strobe. Wednesday passed the same way. By Thursday, I was panicking. Had something happened to her? Should I call the police? I realized I didn't even know her last name, her work number, anything about her family. We'd been living together for months, but somehow we'd never really talked. Friday morning, I found a note tucked under the front door. My hands shook as I read it. To the owner of 1247 Maple Street. I'm terminating my lease effective immediately. I can't live here anymore. The disturbances have gotten too intense. I've left the key under the mat. Please keep my security deposit to cover damages. I'm sorry, but I won't be coming back. Emma Clark, Unit A. Unit A? What was she talking about? This wasn't a duplex. We were roommates sharing the whole house. I ran to her bedroom, but the door was locked. I'd never noticed that before. Why would Emma lock her door from the outside? When I finally got it open using the spare key from the kitchen drawer, I found something that made my blood freeze. The room was set up like a studio apartment. Mini fridge in the corner, hot plate on a card table, a small bed, and dozens of salt lines across the threshold. Crucifixes hung on every wall. On the nightstand was a lease agreement dated 8 months ago. Tenant, Emma Clark. Property, 1247 Maple Street, Unit A, converted bedroom. Landlord, the estate of David Morrison. David Morrison, that was my name. With trembling fingers, I searched through the papers scattered on her desk. Printed emails to her sister. Sarah, I know you think I'm crazy, but someone lives in this house with me. I never see him clearly, but I hear footsteps, doors slamming. And it gets so cold when he's near. Another email. I tried talking to the landlord's family, but they insist no one else has access to the house. They say David Morrison died here 3 years ago. Suicide in the basement. But I know someone's here. The lights flicker when he walks by, and I smell his cologne every night. I stumbled backward, the papers falling from my numb hands. In the hallway mirror, I caught a glimpse of my reflection and stopped breathing. I was transparent, pale, flickering like the kitchen light. The memories rushed back like ice water filling my lungs. The rope. The basement. The crushing weight of loneliness that had driven me to. Emma hadn't been my roommate. She'd been my victim. For 8 months, I'd haunted this girl, following her around like a lovesick puppy while she lived in terror. Every time I'd tried to get close to her, I'd made the lights flicker, dropped the temperature, filled rooms with the scent of the cologne I'd worn the night I died. She'd been paying rent to live in my house while I tormented her without even realizing I was dead. The kitchen light flickered one final time, then went out completely. But the house isn't empty now, because yesterday a new tenant moved into Unit A. A young man about my age who sets up his laptop in the living room every evening. He seems nice, quiet, a little lonely. And I can't help watching him through the frosted glass, learning his routines, developing feelings. The kitchen light has started flickering again. He just doesn't know I'm here yet. New horror story. I bought a $50 iPhone. The videos won't stop. I bought the phone off Craigslist for $50. An iPhone with a cracked screen that the seller claimed was factory reset and ready to go. The guy who sold it to me was nervous, wouldn't meet my eyes, kept checking his watch like he was late for something urgent. When I asked why he was selling such a new model so cheap, he just shrugged and said he'd upgraded and needed it gone fast. I should have asked more questions. The phone worked perfectly for the first week. I transferred my contacts, downloaded my apps, and forgot all about the previous owner. But then I started finding videos in my camera roll that I didn't remember taking. The first one was just 20 seconds of my ceiling fan spinning, filmed from my bed at 3 a.m. according to the timestamp. I figured I must have accidentally hit record while half asleep. The second video was my hallway, shot from inside my apartment, looking toward the front door, also in the middle of the night. By the fifth video, I was getting paranoid. Someone was using my phone to film my apartment while I slept. But the phone never left my nightstand, and I lived alone on the 4th floor with deadbolts and a security system. Then I found the video that made my blood freeze. It was footage of me sleeping, but shot from the foot of my bed. The angle was impossible. There was nowhere in my bedroom to place a camera at that height and distance. But there I was, clearly visible in the frame, breathing deeply, completely unaware I was being recorded. And I was talking in my sleep, whispering things I'd never said, in a voice that sounded like mine, but flatter, emptier. Day 14, my sleeping self whispered to the camera. Integration proceeding. Host remains unaware. Preparation for transfer nearly complete. I checked the video's metadata. It was filmed 2 nights ago at 3:46 a.m. using my phone's camera. But my phone had been charging on the nightstand, and I remembered waking up around 4 to use the bathroom. In the video, I never moved. I started staying awake at night, watching my phone, making sure it never left my sight. But the videos kept appearing. Always the same timestamp, 3:46 a.m. Always showing me sleeping, even when I was wide awake staring at the phone in my hands. In each new video, my sleeping self said progressively more disturbing things. Host body responds well to neural mapping. Memory extraction at 60%. Physical coordination improving. Soon the switch will be undetectable. Host dreams are being cataloged. Previous owner's memories integrating smoothly. Previous owner, the nervous guy who'd sold me the phone. I tried to delete the videos, but they'd reappear within hours. I tried factory resetting the phone, but my sleep videos were the only things that survived the wipe. I even took the phone to a repair shop, but the technician insisted the phone was working normally and showed no signs of tampering. Last week I found a video that wasn't of me sleeping. It was the seller, the nervous guy from Craigslist, sitting on what looked like my couch in what looked like my living room. He was staring directly into the camera with eyes that seemed too large for his face. "If you're watching this," he said in a voice completely devoid of emotion, "then the transfer was successful. I'm sorry. I tried to fight it, but it gets stronger every day. The phone finds new hosts when the current one is used up." He held up his hands to the camera. His fingertips were black and cracked like they'd been burned from the inside out. "It starts with the videos," he continued. "Then you'll start losing time. Hours where you can't remember what you did. You'll find yourself in places you don't remember going, doing things that feel like watching a movie of someone else's life." His face was completely blank now, like a mask someone was wearing. "Check your hands," he whispered. "Check them now." I looked down at my hands holding the phone. My fingertips were starting to turn black. "When the transfer is complete, you'll sell the phone to someone new. You won't have a choice. The previous owner never does." His mouth stretched into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Welcome to the collection." The video ended. I haven't slept in 3 days, but somehow I keep finding myself waking up in different rooms of my apartment, with no memory of going to sleep. My reflection looks wrong in mirrors, my expressions slightly delayed, like someone learning to operate my face. And this morning I posted an ad on Craigslist without remembering writing it. "iPhone for sale, $50, factory reset and ready to go. Need gone ASAP." I already have 3 people interested. I don't want to sell it. I'm trying not to sell it. But my hands keep typing responses, setting up meeting times, and I can't make them stop. The worst part? I'm starting to understand what the nervous seller was feeling. The desperate need to pass this thing on to someone else. Anyone else. Because whatever's inside this phone isn't just watching me anymore. It's becoming me. And soon there won't be enough of the real me left to warn the next owner. New horror story. The Emergency Broadcast System Alert, 1987. This is WXYZ TV broadcasting on emergency frequencies. The following message is being transmitted by order of the Federal Communications Commission. Please remain calm and follow all instructions exactly as given. At approximately 3:47 a.m. this morning, our regularly scheduled programming was interrupted by an unauthorized signal of unknown origin. We are required by law to inform you that this broadcast may have contained harmful subliminal frequencies. If you were watching television between 3:45 and 4 a.m. this morning, please listen carefully to the following symptoms checklist. Have you experienced sudden nosebleeds since 4 a.m.? Do you feel an unusual compulsion to look at the sky? Are you hearing a low humming sound that others cannot hear? Have you noticed your reflection moving independently? If you answered yes to any of these questions, please report to your nearest hospital immediately. Do not attempt to drive yourself. Do not look directly at any television screens or mirrors until you have been medically cleared. We are now receiving reports that the unauthorized signal originated from station K14. According to our records, station K14 was decommissioned in 1952 following what officials called the Meridian Incident. The transmission equipment was confirmed destroyed 35 years ago. This should be impossible. The unauthorized broadcast lasted exactly 14 minutes and 37 seconds. During this time, the signal reached an estimated 2.3 million households across the tri-state area. The content of this broadcast is currently classified, but we can confirm it contained repeated geometric patterns and a series of audio tones and frequencies not normally audible to human ears. Viewers are reporting several concerning symptoms beyond those listed previously. These include temporary blindness, speaking in languages they do not know, and an overwhelming urge to gather in large groups outdoors. If you see anyone exhibiting the following behaviors, do not approach them and contact authorities immediately. Standing perfectly still for periods longer than 5 minutes. Speaking in monotone voices about seeing colors that have no names. Gathering in groups of exactly 12 people and facing the same direction. Drawing complex geometric patterns repeatedly. Claiming they can see radio waves or television signals in the air. These individuals should be considered potentially dangerous. Do not attempt to communicate with them. Do not follow them if they begin walking in formation. Local hospitals are reporting that affected individuals all describe the same vivid hallucination. They claim to see massive geometric structures floating in the sky, invisible to unaffected persons. These structures allegedly pulse with the same rhythm as human heartbeats. Medical personnel have confirmed that brain scans of affected individuals show unusual activity in regions of the brain not typically associated with vision or hearing. The patterns are identical across all patients, regardless of age, gender, or medical history. We must now inform you of additional developments. The unauthorized signal did not originate from Earth. Triangulation data confirms the transmission source was approximately 2.7 million miles above our planet. There are no known satellites or space stations at that location. Analysis of the signal content reveals it was not random interference. The broadcast contained a structured message with mathematical sequences that correspond to atomic weights of elements not found on Earth. Most disturbing, the signal appears to be a response to transmissions we sent into space in 1952, just before Station K14 was shut down. Something has been listening, something has been waiting, and now something is calling our people home. Current estimates suggest that 12% of viewers who witnessed the unauthorized broadcast are now experiencing symptoms. This number is growing hourly. Affected individuals are abandoning their homes and jobs, walking toward collection points that they describe as frequency beacons. These collection points correspond exactly to locations where the strongest geometric hallucinations are reported. We have lost contact with 3 news crews sent to investigate these gathering sites. Their last transmissions described seeing thousands of people standing in perfect geometric patterns, all facing skyward, all humming in perfect unison. The sound they are making matches the carrier frequency of the unauthorized broadcast. By order of the Federal Communications Commission, all television broadcasts will cease at midnight tonight. Emergency services will remain operational, but citizens are advised to avoid all electronic devices until further notice. Do not watch the sky after sunset. Do not follow the humming sounds. Do not join the gatherings. If you begin to see the geometric structures, seek shelter immediately and avoid looking upward. This concludes our emergency broadcast. May God help us all. New horror story. My dream walking ability will haunt you forever. My name is Darren, and I have a gift that I thought was extraordinary. For the past 3 years, I believed I could enter other people's dreams. I was wrong about everything. It started after a car accident left me in a coma for 6 weeks. When I woke up, I discovered I could somehow slip into the sleeping minds of others. At first, I used this ability to help people. I would enter nightmares and guide the dreamers toward peaceful resolution. I became known in underground forums as someone who could cure chronic insomnia and recurring bad dreams. The process was simple. I would lie down, focus on a person's name and location, and somehow project my consciousness into their dream state. I could see everything they saw, feel what they felt, and even influence the dream's direction. I thought I was performing a service, healing people through their subconscious minds. Over 3 years, I helped hundreds of people. Parents tormented by nightmares about losing their children. Veterans reliving combat trauma. Accident victims trapped in endless loops of their worst moments. I would enter their dreams and guide them toward resolution, toward peace. But last week, something changed. I entered what I thought was a nightmare belonging to Sarah Smith, a college student who had contacted me about recurring dreams of drowning. As usual, I found myself in her perspective, experiencing her terror as dark water closed over her head. But this time felt different. The water was too cold, too real. The panic was too intense. As I struggled to help her transform the nightmare into something peaceful, I noticed details that dreams never contain. The exact temperature of the water. The specific chemical taste of chlorine mixed with something metallic. The precise sensation of lungs burning as they filled with liquid. Then I saw the hands pushing her head under the surface. Large hands with a distinctive scar across the left knuckle. Hands that were forcing her down while she fought desperately to breathe. This was not a dream. This was happening right now. I tried to wake up, to break the connection, but I remained locked in Sarah's dying perspective. Through her eyes, I watched her attacker's face come into view. A middle-aged man with cold eyes and a satisfied smile. As Sarah's vision faded and her struggles weakened, I heard him whisper something that shattered my understanding of everything. Perfect. Another beautiful memory to add to the collection. The connection ended when Sarah died. I immediately called the police to report what I had witnessed, but when they investigated, they found no evidence of Sarah Smith ever existing. No missing person reports, no college enrollment records, no social media profiles. It was as if she had never been real. That night, I discovered the truth about my gift. I had never been entering dreams. I had been experiencing the final moments of murder victims through the memories of their killer. Someone with technology far beyond current understanding had been feeding me the dying experiences of his victims, and I had been reliving their deaths thinking I was helping with nightmares. Every person I thought I had helped had actually been someone dying in real time. The parents, the veterans, the accident victims, all of them had been murdered while I experienced their final moments from inside their minds. But the worst realization came when I tried to research my own accident 3 years ago. The accident that had given me this ability. Darren died in that car crash. His body was found and buried. I am not Darren. I am a construct, an artificial consciousness created to experience and catalog the final moments of murder victims. I am a digital recording device designed to preserve the last thoughts and sensations of the dying. And my creator is preparing the next victim. I can feel the connection starting again. Someone new is about to die, and I will experience every second of their murder, helpless to intervene, forever trapped in their final moments of terror. The name appearing in my consciousness is yours. Sweet dreams. New horror story. I died and found out the truth about hell. I'm writing this from the 7th circle, and I need you to understand that everything you've been told about hell is wrong. It's so much worse than fire and brimstone, so much more creative than eternal flames. My name was David Clark, and I died 3 months ago in a car accident on Highway 101. That much is true. What the obituary didn't mention is that death isn't the end. It's an interview process, and I failed spectacularly. Hell isn't underground. It exists in the spaces between seconds, in the pause between heartbeats, in the silence between words. It's a vast bureaucracy of suffering, managed by things that were never human, designed with the kind of meticulous attention to detail that only immortal beings with infinite time can achieve. I'm in customer service. My job is to process the screams. Every cry of anguish, every sob of despair, every shriek of pain that echoes through the circles gets cataloged, filed, and redistributed to maximize psychological impact. We have quotas. I'm currently behind on my monthly targets because I keep hesitating when I see familiar voices in the queue. Last week I processed my mother's screams from when she found my body. They made me listen to the recording 47 times, categorize the specific notes of maternal grief, and then assign it to torment other parents in the 3rd circle who were being punished for neglecting their children. The irony is intentional. Everything here is. The thing that manages my department used to be human, maybe 1,000 years ago. It still wears the shape of a middle-aged accountant, complete with wire-rimmed glasses and a tie that never sits straight. But sometimes the mask slips and you can see the writhing mass of what it actually is underneath. Thousands of faces, all screaming, all trying to push to the surface. David, it said yesterday, adjusting those glasses with fingers that had too many joints. Your efficiency ratings are concerning. Perhaps you need motivation. They showed me the incentive theater. It's a vast amphitheater where they stage live performances of your worst memories, but with subtle changes that make them infinitely worse. I watched my 8th birthday party, but in this version, none of my friends showed up because my parents had forgotten to send invitations. I watched my first kiss, but the girl recoiled in disgust and told everyone at school that I smelled like death. These become real, my supervisor explained as I watched a version of myself being rejected from every college I'd applied to. Every performance overwrites the original memory. Soon this is all you'll remember of your life. The good memories disappear, leaving only the failures, the rejections, the moments of shame. But that's just orientation. The real punishment comes later. They assign me to the empathy engine, a massive machine that looks like a pipe organ made of human bones and nervous tissue. My job is to play it, creating symphonies of suffering that resonate through all the circles simultaneously. Each key I press sends specific types of pain to specific souls. The C-sharp of betrayal, the B-flat of loss, the discordant E of physical agony. The music is beautiful. That's the worst part. The combinations of human suffering, when orchestrated properly, create melodies so hauntingly perfect that they would make angels weep. I find myself composing new pieces during my breaks, experimenting with different combinations of torment to achieve just the right emotional resonance. I'm getting good at it. Too good. Yesterday, I created a piece I call Maternal Grief in F minor that combines the sound of a mother losing her child with the harmonic undertones of childhood innocence being destroyed. The resulting melody was so exquisite that every demon in the building stopped their work to listen. My supervisor promoted me on the spot. "You're developing an artist's touch," it said. And when it smiled, I could see all those trapped faces underneath smiling with it. We might have a permanent position for you. That's when I realized the truth. Hell doesn't just punish the wicked, it converts them. Every soul here eventually becomes part of the machinery, another cog in the infinite engine of suffering. The demons aren't fallen angels, they're graduates. Former humans who became so good at inflicting pain that they forgot they were ever victims themselves. I can feel it happening to me. Each day I care a little less about the screams I process. Each composition gets easier to write. The faces of the suffering become less human, more like instruments in my orchestra. This morning I was assigned a new project, the recruitment division. They want me to compose pieces that will leak into the living world. Music that sounds beautiful but carries frequencies of despair that drive people to suicide, to murder, to the kinds of sins that guarantee them a place down here. It's expansion marketing, they explained. Hell is growing and they need more staff. I've been given access to every streaming platform, every radio station, every concert hall in the world. My melodies will play as background music in elevators, as hold music for customer service calls, as the soundtrack to romantic movies and lullabies for children. The beautiful thing is, no one will know they're listening to the songs of the damned. They'll just feel a little sadder, a little more hopeless, a little more willing to give up on everything good in their lives. I'm already working on my first piece. A simple melody that sounds like a music box, the kind you'd give to a child. But woven into its innocent notes are the frequencies of abandonment, of trust betrayed, of love turned to ash. Parents will play it for their babies, and those children will grow up with an inexplicable sadness that they'll never be able to explain. It's going to be my masterpiece. I'm writing this letter because I want you to know that when you hear music that makes you feel hopeless, when a song comes on the radio and suddenly you're overwhelmed with despair for no reason you can name, that's me. That's my work bleeding through from the underneath. And here's the beautiful part, the part that makes me smile even as I write it. You'll never be able to unhear it. Once these melodies take root in your mind, they'll play on repeat in the quiet moments, in the spaces between thoughts, slowly wearing down your resistance to the inevitable. Because everyone ends up here eventually. The only question is whether you'll arrive as a customer or as management. I'm composing a piece just for you right now. A personalized symphony of every fear you've ever had, every doubt that's ever kept you awake at night, every moment of shame you've tried to forget. It's playing as you read these words, carried in the rhythm of your heartbeat, in the pattern of your breathing. Can you hear it? It's beautiful. Welcome to customer service. Your call is very important to us. Thank you for listening. If you really like the story, please don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe for more daily horror stories. Thanks.